John Light, president and founder of Sabretooth Recruiting. And today, for a guest, I have Chris Calderone. And Chris, I know that you sit today at a company called The Difference Card. And it's one of the things that intrigued me so much. So thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, John, I am the Chief Revenue Officer for The Difference Card. Really excited to be here with you.
Awesome. Okay. Well, number one, we got to figure out along the way. We got to learn more about the Difference Card because when I see card, I either think Hallmark or I think credit. Amex, Visa, MasterCard, whatever. And this is neither. And this is something that's a really cool concept. But I think first place we should start is tell me a little bit more, share a little bit more about how you ended up with the Difference Card as a CRO and kind of the journey that it took to get there.
Sure. Yeah, I started my career out of college at Aetna, went through their group school training program, learned all about health insurance. It's not something you really learn about in college, but I went into an immersive training program, was up in Hartford, Connecticut for 6 months, learning all about the commercial health insurance space. I then moved over to Anthem, Blue Cross Blue Shield, learned about the whole blues world, the Blues Association, very interesting how they interact with each other in each state. And then I actually met the founder of the Difference Card, Paul Stabi, and this was probably 15 years ago. I've been at the organization for about 14 years now, but came to work for the original founder and owner, Paul Stabi, and he was a self-funded expert but wanted to find a way for the small to mid-size customer to benefit from those types of self-funded benefits that the big boys get, the big employers. So it was really interesting what he was doing in the mid-size space, in the mid-market employer group health insurance space. And a lot of my customers, I was at Anthem at the time, were migrating to his solution. This was in the New York marketplace. So I went and met with Paul, learned more about it, and made that jump over to the Difference Card about 14 years ago, started on the sales team, helped a lot of employers to reduce their health insurance using this strategy, and we grew the business from there. We moved into the California market, the Chicago, Illinois market, and have subsequently, over the past 10 plus years, really grown throughout the country. I've got salespeople in 20 states now across the country and customers all over. Yeah.
No kidding. Well, congrats on that. Number one, 15 years tenure with progression anywhere today is anomalous, right? You just don't, you don't see that very often anymore because companies, they have mission creep and sometimes we do, other things come up in life, but I'd like to know, just from a complete curiosity standpoint, because when I hear, reducing healthcare costs, what typically jumps to mind is you think about, well, you cut costs by taking things away from people, and you cut costs by limiting supply and things of this nature, but the Difference Card is none of that. So maybe a great place to kind of explain what you guys do would be, tell us what the biggest problem is that you solve and how you approach it and deliver that to your customer base.
A lot of employers in the small and mid-sized space especially are faced with very large rate increases lately. We're talking 10 to 20% increases on an already big line item. The health benefits expense for customers is often the second biggest expense beyond payroll for many of these small to mid-sized employers. So when you hit that with 10 or 20%, that's not something you can budget for. So that's a problem that a lot of employers are faced with right now, especially post-COVID. We've seen claims spike and rate increases spike. So a lot of customers come to us looking for a way out of that problem. And we work with their consultants. So Difference Card is a wholesale organization. We don't work directly with the end employer. We work through insurance brokers and consultants. And the brokers and consultants are the ones that often come to us and they say, we got this problem. I've got XYZ employer and they're getting this 20% renewal. They can't afford it. Can your solution help them to reduce the benefit cost without reducing the benefits to the staff. And that's really key because you're right, John. You had a good insight there. When you hear reducing healthcare costs, you often feel like, all right, I'm just cutting the benefits. And really, that's passing along cost to the staff. That, in our mind, is not creating value or savings. You're just passing cost from the employer to the employees. And our whole mission is to provide better benefits at a better price to employees. So when we talk about healthcare savings, we want to make sure that the employees are not paying more. If anything, they might be paying less. We think if you can give them better benefits, you can actually create more of a preventive care environment and avoid some of those bigger ticket items down the road. So our whole strategy involves reducing the healthcare premiums and maybe buying a higher deductible plan from the insurance carrier. But the difference card is actually it's a MasterCard that we give to employees to pay for that difference in the deductible or the difference in the copay so that the employee doesn't have to come out of their pocket. This is the best kind of credit card they'll ever get because they don't see a bill for it. The employer, their employer actually gets the bill. They pay for this on their behalf, and the employer's using the savings in premium. They're getting this big discount from the insurance carrier. They're using some of that savings to pay for this card, and they're often left with a net savings of 18% is our average net savings for employers.
Man, and that 18% can add up to a lot. I mean, if you're talking about, say, $10 million in cost or $5 million in cost, 18% is not insignificant for a lot of companies. I mean, most employers in the United States have fewer than 500 employees. The vast majority, 92 or 94%, some obscenely high percentage of companies have some. Now, a lot of those companies, granted, they're solo shops or they're real small, under 10, under 5. But there are a lot of companies that are probably sitting 50 or 100 head count up to a few hundred that probably feel like they get taken to the cleaners with healthcare premiums and cost.
Yeah, that's true. And our sweet spot is really that 50 employer life to 250 employer life. They're mostly fully insured, which means they're overpaying in healthcare premiums, and they're getting these big rate increases, and they're looking for help. So that's the ideal kind of client profile for us, that 50 to 250 life employer group that is just sick and tired of paying too much in health insurance premiums. They're looking for a way out. They're looking for a solution, but they don't want to hurt their employees. They want to continue to use benefits as a way to retain and attract great talent. So they're using this as a solution to reduce the premiums, reduce the fixed cost, which often will reduce the payroll deductions too, because employees are often paying towards the cost of care. So you can reduce the employee cost, reduce the employer cost, but still deliver great benefits. Keep the copays low, keep the deductibles low, using the difference card funding strategy.
So if I understand it correctly, you go out with a company, they buy a high deductible, low premium plan, and then you compare it against the plan they had with a much lower deductible but higher premium. Yeah. And then you guys live in that space in the premium differential. Yeah,
that's exactly right. We're always benchmarking to the plan they had before. So let's say before they had a $1,000 deductible plan and maybe $1 million premium for that $1,000 deductible. That's a typical 100 life employer group. We see a lot of those plans out there. Well, we're going to suggest that they buy the $5,000 deductible plan that reduces the premium from, let's say, $1 million to $700,000. And then on the difference card side, it might cost them, let's say, $100,000 on our side of the house to make up those differences in the deductible, to pay that $4,000 difference in my example in the deductible. That would cost, let's say, $100,000. But in that example, you've got a net savings of $200,000 that the employer gets to keep. And they've given the same deductible, same benefit of $1,000 deductible to their staff.
Just by doing that one little step of having the difference card, and when you go in, pay a piece on your card and pay a piece on that card.
That's right. Correct.
Yeah. Why isn't this everywhere? Because, I mean, with big companies, I've been with companies where I know they self-fund, and they'll often buy a secondary policy for things that go over expectations and this sort of thing. But, I mean, it feels like you're taking something that's exclusive to big companies and almost democratizing it, getting it into smaller companies where you have a greater lever against cost and increases year over year than you would have if you're on your own.
Yeah, that's accurate. And there is a lot of potential for us to continue to spread the word and get more employers utilizing this. That's one of the exciting parts of my position here is I get to help to spread the word and hire really talented salespeople that are out there talking to insurance brokers, getting them to understand how this works. And the insurance market doesn't move quickly, so we understand that. We got to make sure people understand why this works and where it's a good fit and where it's not. And to make sure you build trust with your customers and your broker partners. So that does take time, but we've done a great job of spreading this in the markets that we've been in, and we're entering some new states, some new markets. That's really exciting for us because there's a lot of upside in those states. Texas, for example, is a relatively new market for us. Massive state, lots of opportunity. We hired someone in the Dallas market 2 years ago. He's been highly successful. So then last year, we had a sales person join us in the Austin market. And this year, we're looking to make a hire in Houston because we know every city has its own unique components. So you've got to have somebody in the local market that can tell the story in each market. And that's why there's a lot of exciting upside for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because I doubt you ever deal with tiny numbers. Yeah, I mean, relatively speaking. I mean, the numbers are potentially huge because, like you said, I've always looked at business, in my business as a headhunter, right, as a recruiter. I've always looked at things as my two biggest costs that I'm going to have to deal with are people and real estate. Well, we're a distributed workforce now, so real estate, it's out the window. But that means people, and people, that's what you compensate, but it's also, training and development, insurance coverage, or some, and all those other things that go into it. It can be a huge number in your P&L. I can't imagine industries that, maybe they do custom manufacturing runs in pharmaceuticals or in food stuff or in whatever. They don't operate on these massive margins. So you have an opportunity to save 5%, 10%, 18%, whatever the number might be. People would be insane not to look at it. I don't, the way costs are going, and I don't know how it is where you are, but I look at the insurance premiums on automobiles, houses, healthcare, and I haven't seen them retreat. I haven't seen them go down.
We're seeing massive inflation in the health insurance space. It is inflating by an even higher rate. We're in a high inflationary environment in general in this macro environment, and health insurance is still outpacing this high inflationary environment. We've seen these double-digit increases for the past 5 years, so people are looking for answers.
Yeah. People are looking for relief.
Yeah.
I think the first thing you do is you stop the bleeding, and then you try to worry about the rest of it. But man, I can't imagine the excitement that you guys must feel on a regular basis about, hey, we got to get out and evangelize this stuff and get it out into the marketplace. So kudos to you, Chris, and the difference card. And let me ask if we have somebody in our audience listening in who wants to talk with you, wants to learn more, is really interested in what could be very material savings to their P&L. What's the best way that they could find you and get in touch?
Yeah, our website is really the best way to do it, differencecard.com. There is a request a proposal button right on the homepage there, and it'll ask for a couple of pieces of information. How big is your organization? Or if you're an insurance broker, what part of the country are you in? So you answer a couple of questions just so we can best serve you and connect you to the right person on our team to help. But www.differencecard.com homepage, just click that request a proposal button. That's the best way to get in touch with us.
Awesome. And for people listening in who are connected to me on LinkedIn, Chris Calderone and I are both connected on LinkedIn, so you're a hop, skip, and a jump away from hopping into his LinkedIn mailbox. Chris, thanks so much for joining me today, man. I appreciate it. I'm excited about what we have to share. In fact, I've got some questions for you post-show.
Thanks for having me, John. Really appreciate it.